Good morning. Everybody have a good break? Ready to go? So we've got you for the next 30 minutes, and we are going to talk a little bit about technology, who owns it, how it's impacting compliance processes, and the different operational functions in a business today. So quickly, I'm going to introduce everybody. I'm Susan Terry. I lead go-to-market strategy for PerformLine as it relates to our contact center offerings, chat, voice, and have recently started developing channel partnerships with those others in the industry that will help us expand our offerings for you guys. So with that, I'm going to introduce the group. All the way to my right is Michael Waldron. Michael is with Bayview Loan Services. He is Managing Director and the Chief Compliance Officer. Michael is actually also a customer of PerformLine. And so the important thing to know about this panel is each one of these guys has a distinct discipline. And so when they answer the questions, they're going to be coming at it from their viewpoint and how they manage their business on a day-to-day basis. So that's Michael Waldron. In the middle, and I'm going to screw his name up, Karl Pawlewicz.
Oh, it's perfect.
Perfect, wonderful. Is the head of marketing for Olark. Olark is a chat platform. Guys, I'm not going to use that. Olark is a chat platform, and they are also a partner of PerformLine. So that means today we integrate with the Olark system. We pull in their chat transcripts in order to analyze the discussions that are taking place and monitor those for regulatory compliance. So that's Karl. Immediately to my right is Donna Peeples. Donna is the Chief Customer Officer for yet another partner of PerformLine, and they're called Pypestream. They are an AI chatbot platform specializing in solutions for automating customer engagement via the chat and messaging channel in highly regulated industries. And so prior to that, Donna was actually the head of customer service, customer experience for AIG Insurance. Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And since we've talked a lot about chat already, I'm going to continue the theme. The first chatbot actually dates back to the early 1940s and 1950s, right? And then we evolved through, and we end up with Watson back in 2006. And so today we're all familiar with Cortana, with Siri, with all of those. Those are the same underlying technologies that we're talking about when you read an article today about chatbots. So with that, what we wanted to do with this first question is kind of talk about what is the greatest opportunity and the greatest risk that companies face today in deploying those types of technologies. And this goes beyond marketing, but it's actual customer engagement as well as prospect engagement, whether for acquisition or for support services. So with that, I'm actually going to start with Michael. You okay with that?
Sure, great. Good morning, and thank you so much for having me. So I am so encouraged as a CCO to hear yesterday and today about the collaborative nature of compliance.
Michael, they want you to use your mic, I'm
Sure.
afraid.
The collaborative nature of compliance. So from where I sit, it's a co-investment. The biggest opportunity around the technologies that are being utilized and that are emerging is the opportunity to create, obviously, efficiencies. It's an opportunity to create an additional avenue for sustained growth and responsible and disciplined growth. The downside, quite frankly, is utilizing it in a way where your systems remain disparate. So it's wonderful to have various touch points and to catalog data and analytics. The danger, though, is if you don't have a structure where you appropriately utilize it, you put yourself in a position of responsibility with regulators where you have the information and you're not putting it to use. So disparate systems and an inability to utilize the output from the technology, to me as a CCO, are the greatest dangers that we face.
Great response.
Nice. Yeah, I was at a meetup just recently for AI technology here in New York, and a gentleman came over and said to me, you know, if you think about it, AI is really going to be the last innovation that we as humans make. And I said, boy, that's really dark. So I guess the biggest risk here is human extinction, maybe. The biggest opportunity, though, really is to, in the near term, is to make humans more powerful. So I think if you look at the way AI is able to go through massive amounts of data and then now make predictions or recommendations to the humans who are handling those customer-facing interactions, we have an opportunity right now to make the people who are on the front lines even better at their jobs. I think one of the big risks, speaking realistically, is downgrading the customer experience. So if we put too much trust in the bots and the AI to handle customer-facing interactions, then we risk losing our customers' faith in the service we provide, or their faith that there's actually going to be a human there to help them. I also agree that siloing the data, being able to get the data that AI processes for you, machine learning processes for you, out of the department that processed it and into the rest of the organization is a big challenge and a huge risk if you're not careful about it.
Hi, everybody. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting a little anxious right now because I haven't checked my iPhone in a couple of seconds. And so for those of you who know or love a millennial, I think, you know, the tide started shifting when my daughters came into possession of a way to text. And I will tell you, those girls don't know how to use the phone anymore. If they call me, there's blood or money involved. You better believe. So, you know, if I want to reach them, if I want to communicate with them, I have to text them. Those millennials have pushed us all into that environment. Do you know that texting, messaging, is the fastest growing communication channel in our history? And this year, it's estimated that 8.3 trillion messages will be sent. And that's just my daughters. So I think, you know, the opportunity is to meet your customers or any stakeholder audience in the space where we're moving to, whether that's on the phone or on the web. You know, it always amazes me that, you know, big companies, digital strategy, you know, was really built primarily around websites and emails. Do you know the email open rate now is below 20%? And did you know if you send your customer a message, they're going to answer it on average within 90 seconds. And there's a 98% open rate. So huge opportunities done now. The problem is if it's not done right, you don't get a second chance. So I think the points that my colleagues here have made are absolutely very valid. So I think it's on companies to do their diligence around how do they connect those disparate systems, because, you know, that's the bane of a lot of our existences in trying to satisfy customers or to get to answers. Not only do the systems not talk to each other, the people don't talk to each other. And, you know, customers and stakeholders want it to be more effortless, more frictionless. So I think doing your diligence, making sure that you've got the right application for your particular circumstance is the biggest risk that anybody has.
Okay, and I'm going to wrap up on this question and just kind of get to a point that from what we see in the customers that work with PerformLine on a day-to-day basis and that have already engaged using chat and or messaging in the channel, I think one of the greatest challenges is in fact getting it up and running, but proper planning and proper selection of the technology based off of what you want to achieve can eliminate those problems. I think the single greatest opportunity comes from the automation of repeatable, standardized processes. Right? So if you look at a payments type of deployment or you look at a general customer service deployment, if you sit back and you look at the data you have today, how many of the first time questions from a brand new customer come to you and they're the exact same questions and you're providing the exact same answers? That screams operational benefit from an AI-based solution. And so I think a lot of people confuse the fact that when we talk about chatbot, we're not saying there's never a customer or a live body on the end. What we're saying is we use that chatbot the same way you use an IVR today. An IVR is a bot, right? So it's the exact same process. All we're doing is dropping that into a different communication channel. And so now, instead of using highly paid or moderately paid people to answer the same question the same way over and over again, we're going to automate that process the same way you did 20 years ago in an IVR. And we're just going to do that in a messaging channel, whether it's SMS or it's web chat. So I think those are the greatest kind of risk and opportunities from my chair in working with our customers on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and that's a great point, Susan, because what we found in conversations with regulators is, they want to get as consistent an execution as possible and get to crisp resolution for the customer. So, if you can do that, I think that absolutely that's very powerful.
Yeah, that's right. So last year on our platform, we had 1,317 outside audits and workflows conducted. And so the only way to stay sane, I always say, is to look at those as opportunities to get better. But the issue around efficiency and consistency, it would be wonderful if on the same question, customers got the same answer from multiple sources. The risk we run with that, unfortunately, is they don't. And it leads to what we're going to have a session on this afternoon, customer complaints, confusion, alienation. So the consistency part isn't simply about creating the efficiency and a cost savings. It's truly driving the consistency for the customer experience and for the regulator's view.
Okay, let's hear it for the Chief Compliance Officer that's worried about how happy the customer is. I like that. I like that. Okay, so our second question really comes back to the data, and Michael touched on that in his first response. But I think this is worth a drill down a little bit further, not just in terms of regulatory compliance, but also the data in terms of the customer interaction. Right, so largely we're talking a lot about regulatory compliance today, but I think part of the challenges we face as people that manage compliance workflows is understanding that there are entire other teams out there that don't care. Right? There are other people in your companies that are worried about the customer experience. They're worried about the marketing insights and the data about how do we sell more and do better. So I want to take kind of a deeper dive into that data aspect. And I'm going to start with Donna this time and talk a little about from an AI perspective, again, how does the use of this type of technology really impact the data in terms of an opportunity?
Great. Well, I don't know about you guys, but we've been talking about big data for so many years now. And it's like big data, little data, just get me the right data, But what is the right data? Because probably like me, you feel like some days you're swimming in data, other days you're drowning in data. And everybody has their own data. So how do you combine those and get to a place that can deepen your understanding of customers or solving problems? And, I've found that, the biggest company I ever worked for was, AIG, and we had the data. But trying to get that into one place so that we had one version of the truth. Even when you think about setting goals for the year, getting to an understanding first of an agreement of where you are so you can measure if you've won or lost against whatever you're measuring was so important to begin to start to measure improvements. So, for that company, it was the creation of a chief data officer, a global chief data officer, and getting all that information pushed in. Didn't mean everybody couldn't have their own data, but getting it all fed into one common repository was really step one for us. As we started moving into other channels to pull in data. This automation that Susan was talking about, that we've been talking about, is really important because the power that gives you in real time to see what's going on with your customers or your stakeholders can be put immediately to use. The other problem that I think we've all kind of suffered from is that we tend to aggregate and live by the law of large numbers, so that we put ourselves in a position where we can't see the tree for the forest. And here's a newsflash: everybody wants to have a personalized experience with you. One size fits one. So I think that's the real power that having AI, that having this automation and real-time access to data and behaviors can bring to the business. And, Michael talked a little bit about, the money-saving aspects, but I mean, isn't it really nirvana if you can have a solution that not only improves your top line, but it helps you manage your middle line so you get to the bottom line, right?
Yeah, I think I come from a small business. Olark has 40 employees. Our quantitative data is in a pretty decent place, but what I spend more of my time trying to mine is the qualitative data that comes in. So our customers and users and your customers and users have more ways than they ever have to talk to you. Social media, chat, email, phone. It's coming at you from every single angle, and hopefully you're capturing that information someplace, like a CRM or a help desk software or PerformLine. But if you're capturing it, then you should be getting this really rich data that, from a marketing and sales standpoint, is giving you just this beautifully clear perspective on what your customers are saying and how they're saying it. I think that, to me, is the most important piece of data to mine in the qualitative aspect of it, is what are the words and what's the language that your customers use to communicate with you? Because you should be reflecting that back to them in your marketing and sales collateral and on your website and places where you try to get people to convert. And our volume is such where I can go through that once a month or once every other week and do a search for a competitor's name or do a search for a product name and find out exactly what people are saying. That's the really nice part about chat, is it's you have it, it lasts. It's actually more in depth than an email conversation might be. But going through that data on a regular basis and grabbing that sentiment and those keywords is vital to what we do. Now, the promise of AI, when our volume gets to such a point, the machine learning to go through, and we had somebody do a demo for us, and it was like the light bulb went off for us. I mean, it can go through thousands of transcripts, and it can say, okay, these are the keywords that are most commonly occurring. This is the general look at sentiment. I've seen the Zendesk API now is doing sort of predictive sentiment scoring. So as somebody goes through your customer channel and communication points, it can kind of tell whether this is going to have a good resolution or a bad resolution before the thing even finishes. But I think from a sales and marketing standpoint, the qualitative data that you're gathering, you should be analyzing it on a regular basis. And if you're not, or if your compliance department handles that, then you should walk over to the compliance department and say, like, hey, I need you to do a couple of things for me. The last point, and then I'll pass it on, sorry. I think it's also important, too, from a sales and marketing standpoint, to go to the departments that are gathering that customer feedback and try walking in their shoes for a minute, because it'll help you. So go down and do a customer support shift or answer some emails. It'll help you understand what you should be looking for so that you can better target that AI NLP to grab information and grab data that you maybe you didn't know what you're looking for when you get into that data, but if you can go do some customer support things, it might become a little bit more clear to you. Then just one idea.
So I think that in the financial services space, we have been reasonably good about managing data around performance and customer experience. What we haven't done so well is manage data on the compliance side. So one of the things that I have worked really hard at is to what I call moneyballing compliance. It's to really centralize, and we have a system, it's called ECFI, and it's the Enterprise Centralization of Findings and Intelligence. Centralize all of the touch points that impact compliance. And we do that by drawing on the 1,317 outside audits, the 20,000 attributes that we test internally through our quality program, industry intelligence. We break down every consent order and every piece of guidance from the Bureau and the states that apply to our industry. And we put that into a centralized system, and we try to identify trends. We even analyze litigation trends. So what that allows us to do is take, for example, a one-off finding in a North Carolina state audit where it doesn't seem to be much of an issue. But when you bounce that against the fact that in the last 6 months, litigation has tripled around that issue, and you bounce that against the fact that a small platform that is not a counterparty to ours and otherwise would have little value or meaning caught a consent order on that same issue, all of a sudden that one data point from a very disparate and outlying kind of touch point is very, very important. So we work very hard at the governance structure, but eliminating those disparate systems.
Really good. And so that speaks directly to the CFPB report functionality we've now added to the product, right? The concept of we're going to track everything that the CFPB is tracking, and then we're going to give our customers the ability to monitor their own interactions and find out if there are any parallels, right? Are they trending in a direction that they know is having that type of impact in companies? So that's good. And I think my final take on the spin of data is omnichannel. So when PerformLine started, you guys might know we were a web monitoring company, right? We started managing and monitoring web content. And as we continued to do that, we had customers saying, hey, you know what? We need to do the same thing for our phone calls. And now they're saying, hey, we need to do the same thing for our messaging and chat. And social's right behind there, email's right behind there. So it's not just about any given channel, it's about any way you are interacting with a customer or a prospect. It's not just about marketing, it's not just about sales, it's not just about support, it's everything that you do where you are in any way communicating with the customer. That's the scope of what we're looking at. And so now when we find something in a chat transcript or a messaging transcript, we want to be able to bounce it back and find out, is that also happening in voice? Or we want to track it all the way back to our web monitoring and say, is there something on that web page that is causing that dialogue to happen? And we're going to use all of that data to continue to train the bot, right? So it's a continuous loop. That's the data that we're talking about. It's not just about what comes out in the customer engagement. It's about what are we doing to cause it, right? How is it even getting there to begin with? And I think that's the other key data component. Okay, so last question. And this one again ties back to collaboration. So yesterday, again, that first panel talked a lot about, who owns RegTech, right? So we're going to revisit that a little bit, but this team's going to take a bit of a different response, again, from their expertise and from that collaboration component. Karl, start with you.
Sure, yeah, and I guess since we don't really do a ton of RegTech at Olark, I'd offer my perspective from a software standpoint. So last year, 2 years ago, we implemented Slack at our company. It was a big change from Atlassian's HipChat, and we needed somebody to be the sole evangelist for that platform and just really hammer home the message that we're going to use this, and he is the gatekeeper for any questions about it, regular updates, weekly, daily updates. You have to, if you're going to be the person who implements the technology, you have to be ready to be the internal advocate and scream as loud as possible that this is a thing that's happening and everybody's coming along with it. I think that changes a bit as you get to be a larger organization. So obviously the ownership of RegTech at a small company, for us, it's kind of like, who knows anything about this? Okay, you're in charge of it. At a mid-sized company, then you've got special teams that are dedicated to it. And so I think the owners or the owner should be in contact with other stakeholders who might need data out of that technology. But really being clear internally about who is the sole owner of that. So anytime there's questions or confusion about how to use it, they know exactly where to go.
You want me to go next? Because I was going to say you own it.
We all own it.
So, and that's the issue. So, in compliance, just like with, customer satisfaction, everybody owns it and nobody owns it. It just depends on, what the reports or the numbers look like, has been my experience. But, in organizations that are mature, then certainly there is a compliance officer. I don't think you're the outright owner, but you're accountable.
Absolutely.
I think everybody, every department, every function has ownership of their part of it, which, if it were easy, we would have figured it out and assigned one job function to be totally accountable for it and own it outright. But, and as you said, other side of the page, at Pypestream, we now have 61 employees. We are a technology company. And so I spend a lot of time with regulators as the front man and having those conversations. And one of the things that we did, I think, really well is get out there fast and stay out there frequently and have those conversations and get their guidance and their input around as we were developing in these organizations. So it really, for us specifically, is a partnership between the customer piece and the technology piece. So we don't have a compliance officer yet, but we act just that way. Yeah.
So I would agree with that. I view it the same way that I view our compliance management system. I am the steward of our CMS. It is ultimately my responsibility to the platform, to our investors. But that CMS, as good as it is on paper, and as many bodies as I throw at it in my department specifically, is not going to be successful unless everyone views that they have an ownership piece and a role in its success. So the concept of buy-in and co-investment around compliance, whether it's reg tech or blocking and tackling on another front, is critical. You have to have someone who is ultimately responsible, but you can't water down the fact that everyone has a responsibility in a fully functioning compliance management system.
If I can add just one last piece, I think what's important too, if you're considering being the owner of that RegTech, is making sure that the platform is going to play nicely with other platforms that are in play in your organization. So just the way that Olark integrates with PerformLine, Pypestream integrates with PerformLine, the person implementing it should make sure that there's a API with robust documentation that's going to let you connect it to a Salesforce or another platform. Because if you go off to the sales team and try to convince them that it's an all or nothing on this new platform, you're probably going to get a lot of pushback from it. So making sure that there is not only customer support to help walk you through the integration of those platforms, but just the ability to do that, I think, is really important. Make sure it plays nice with everything else that's there.
And so from a PerformLine perspective, we do this every day, right? We work with customers across many industries. Sometimes it's a CMO that walks in the door and says, I need you. Sometimes it's the CCO that walks in the door and says, I need you. Without question, the programs that end up being the most successful are the ones where every discipline in a business sits at the table. So that means marketing is there, sales is there, customer support is there, IT, compliance. Every aspect of the business needs to be aware and engaged. And here's the reason. There is always, we're talking about technology. We're talking about changing the way people do their jobs. There's always change management issues, right? And at the end of the day, let's go back to yesterday in the discussion of culture. What we're talking about isn't just about automation and chatbot. It's about changing the way we work so that we build that culture of compliance through every aspect of the business, right? So with that, we are wrapping up. Thank you very much. These guys are available if anybody has questions.
Thanks, everybody.